when two puppies began crying out of loneliness one night at a quiet animal shelter. No one expected who would come to comfort them, or what she would do. When the staff saw the footage, they couldn't believe their eyes. Barker's pet motel and grooming was usually calm and quiet after hours. But one Saturday night, that peace was interrupted by soft, heartbreaking cries echoing through the halls. The sound came from two tiny newcomers, 9-week-old puppies named Hannah and Carrie. They had been brought in earlier that week by the Alberta Animal Rescue Crew Society. This wasn't their forever home, just a safe stop on the way to adoption. Sandy Aldred, the caring owner of Barker's, made sure the pups were cozy and fed before heading home. She always checked in on the animals even after hours through her phone, thanks to the shelter's indoor cameras. At first, everything seemed fine, but as night fell deeper, the cries began. Hannah and Carrie couldn't sleep. They were scared, confused, and missing the comfort of being close to someone warm. Their little whimpers filled the shelter. Hours passed. The other animals were quiet, but not everyone was sleeping through the noise. In one of the kennels across the hallway, Maggie, an Australian Shepherd mix, was wide awake. Her ears twitched with every sound. Her breathing was slow but uneasy. She lay on the floor, head up, staring at the wall like she was thinking. And honestly, she was. Maggie had been through her own hard moments in the past. Maybe she recognized something in the way the puppies cried. Maybe it reminded her of a time when she'd felt alone, too. Either way, she couldn't ignore it. She stood up slowly, walked to the edge of her kennel, sniffed around. And then she found a small opening near the bottom of the gate. It was made for sliding food or water dishes in and out, not for sneaking out. But Maggie had other plans. Carefully, she began to squeeze her way through the gap. Her legs scrunched, her body wiggled, and after a minute of careful pushing and adjusting, she popped out onto the other side. Now free, she stood up straight. The shelter was dark and silent, but she didn't hesitate. Her paws tapped gently on the floor as she followed the sound of the whimpering. No barking, no growling, just quiet determination. And after a short walk, she reached the puppy's kennel. At first, they didn't even notice her. They were curled up in opposite corners, shaking softly and whining into the air. But Maggie stood still outside the gate, just watching. Her eyes were soft, filled with something hard to describe, like she was already caring for them before even making a move. With quiet focus, Maggie studied her surroundings. She wasn't just reacting. She was thinking. The Australian Shepherd mix scanned her kennel for an opening, and her sharp eyes locked onto a narrow gap near the bottom of the gate. It was meant for food and water bowls. But to her, it was a doorway. She lowered herself slowly, then began to wriggle forward. It took a few tries. Her back legs pushed, her nose guided the way, and after some careful maneuvering, she slipped right through. Her paws hit the floor with purpose. The shelter was dim and quiet, but Maggie didn't need much light. Her ears twitched as she followed the soft cries in the distance. Each step brought her closer to the sound of distress. And then she reached them. Hannah and Carrie were curled up separately, their small bodies trembling with fear. They hadn't stopped crying in hours. Maggie stood in front of their gate and lowered her head, pressing her nose through the gaps. She didn't bark. She didn't whine. She just sat there, calm, steady, and close. Inside the puppy's enclosure, something shifted. Their cries slowed, then stopped. Tiny paws stepped closer to the gate. Carrie leaned forward first, nose to nose with her unexpected visitor. Hannah followed, pressing up against the wire in silence. Maggie stayed still, eyes locked on them both. Meanwhile, back at home, Sandy had just finished tidying up after dinner. As usual, she opened her phone and pulled up the security camera feed from the shelter, just a quick check before bed. But what she saw made her gasp. There on the screen was Maggie, lying in front of the puppy's kennel, wide awake and alert. Sandy blinked, confused. That dog wasn't supposed to be there. She tapped the screen again, zooming in. Maggie's cage is still shut, she whispered to herself, trying to make sense of it. How on earth did she get out? Grabbing her phone, she called one of the other staff members. You need to come see this. Maggie's loose, and she's with the puppies. Not long after, Sandy and 2 staff members pulled into the parking lot, hurried inside, and walked quietly down the hallway. And what they saw stopped them cold. Maggie hadn't moved. She was still lying by the puppy's gate, calm and collected, like she'd been posted there on duty. Inside the enclosure, Hannah and Carrie were cuddled up right near the fence, the same fence they had been hiding from just hours earlier. There were no more cries. Sandy crouched by Maggie's kennel door and checked the latch. It was still locked. Confused, she leaned down and spotted the opening under the gate. She chuckled softly. No way, she said, shaking her head. She really squeezed herself through that? It was hard to believe, but somehow it made perfect sense. Maggie didn't sneak out to cause trouble. She wasn't trying to escape. She just heard something no one else could fix. And she decided to help. As they watched her gently lick the puppies through the wire, the team could see it plainly. The pups had stopped shaking. Their tiny bodies were still, and their eyes were fixed on the dog outside. She had calmed them, just by being near. And then something clicked for Sandy. She's not just being protective, she said. She's remembering. Just 2 weeks earlier, Maggie had given birth. Her days were full of warmth, tiny paws, soft noses, and the deep bond of motherhood. But that time was cut short. Her puppies had been taken away, and soon after, she'd ended up at the shelter. No one knew just how fresh her grief still was. Until now. In that moment, it wasn't just the puppies who needed comfort. Maggie did too. And somehow, they had found each other. Maggie didn't understand why her pups had been taken. She didn't know the reasons behind it, only that one day they were there, and the next they weren't. That empty space left behind followed her everywhere she went. Barker's Pet Motel became her temporary home, a soft landing after the heartbreak. The place was quiet, filled with the scents of other animals and the kind voices of staff. But for Maggie, it still felt strange. She wasn't a mom anymore, not in the way she had been just days earlier. The shelter was calm, but her heart hadn't caught up yet. Until that night. Until 2 little voices pulled her out of her sadness. When Sandy and the team entered the room and saw her wagging her tail near the puppy's kennel, they could feel the energy shift. Maggie looked up at them with bright, knowing eyes, like she was saying, I had to do something. Seeing how calm the puppies were in her presence, Sandy made a quick decision. Let's open the gate, she said softly, just for a little while. As the latch clicked, Maggie didn't rush. She stepped inside the puppy enclosure gently, like she knew the moment was special. Hannah and Carrie perked up instantly and hurried toward her. What followed was pure sweetness, soft licks, snuggles, and happy tail wags. Maggie nuzzled them both, and within minutes the room felt different, lighter, warmer. Sandy and her staff stood nearby, watching quietly. They didn't want to interrupt. It was clear now, these 3 needed each other. So they let them stay together for the night. Later, in an interview with CBC News, Sandy said, "It was really sweet. She just had to be with those puppies. They needed her, and she needed them. It was pretty perfect." By morning, the trio was found curled up in a single pile, peacefully asleep. Maggie's head rested over both puppies like a protective shield. But that peaceful moment was about to be interrupted. Later that afternoon, Maggie's new family arrived. They had been waiting patiently to meet her, eager to take her home and begin their life together. The shelter staff greeted them with smiles, though their hearts were a little heavy. They knew it was time to say goodbye, but Maggie's actions had left a mark none of them would forget. As they showed the new family around, Sandy took a moment to share what had happened the night before. She told them how Maggie had escaped her kennel just to be near two scared puppies, how she had calmed them with nothing but presence and patience. She knew exactly what they needed, Sandy said, her voice catching slightly, like she'd done it before. The family listened, touched by the story, but their hearts were set on bringing Maggie home. After all, they had waited for her, prepared for her, and they were ready to give her the fresh start she deserved. So, with a few more hugs and plenty of grateful smiles, Maggie's time at Barker's came to a close. The team walked her to the door, where her new humans knelt to greet her with gentle hands and warm voices. As she trotted out beside them, Hannah and Carrie watched from their enclosure. Quiet, but okay now. They had shared something important with Maggie, and she had left them better than she found them. Sometimes love doesn't need words or species to make a difference. That night, one grieving mother and two scared puppies found healing in each other, and even though Maggie was on to her next chapter, her story would be told again and again at Barker's, a quiet reminder that sometimes the best comfort comes on four paws. Maggie's story didn't end when she left Barker's. In fact, it was just getting started. The staff knew she had left a mark, not just on the shelter, but on everyone who'd witnessed that quiet, powerful moment between her and the puppies. But none of them expected what would happen next. After the story went public, people everywhere were talking about the Australian Shepherd Cross with the huge heart. Deanna Thompson, from the Alberta Animal Rescue Crew Society, wasn't surprised. "It's not unusual," she said, "for a dog's mothering instincts to kick in like that." Still, even she had to admit, what Maggie had done was pretty incredible. Photos and clips of the night Maggie comforted the two puppies began to spread online. Barker's Pet Motel shared a short post about it on their social media, and the response was overwhelming. Comments flooded in from across the globe. People couldn't stop talking about Maggie's act of kindness or the gentle way she laid outside the kennel just to ease their fear. Some commenters said it made them cry. Others said it gave them hope. The story resonated in ways no one could have predicted. Meanwhile, back at Barker's, life was slowly returning to normal. But not for long. Weeks after that unforgettable night, Hannah and Carrie, the two little pups Maggie had comforted, were healthy, happy, and ready for adoption. Sandy and her team were thrilled by how far the puppies had come. It wasn't just about finding them a home now. It was about finding the right home. After all, these weren't just any puppies. They had become a symbol of hope, love, and second chances. The shelter was flooded with adoption applications from families who had seen the story online and wanted to give the siblings a forever home. The staff took their time, carefully reading every letter and making follow-up calls. They were determined to get it right. And then, something unexpected happened. As they sifted through the stack of applications, one name caught Sandy's eye. It was familiar. She read the form again, and her eyes widened. It was Maggie's new family. They'd applied to adopt the puppies. No one saw that coming. Sandy gathered the team and shared the news. Everyone looked at each other, stunned. Maggie's adoptive family, touched by the bond their dog had created at the shelter, had started to wonder if the pups she comforted were meant to be with her after all. At first, they had wanted to give Maggie a fresh start, but the story had spread so far, and they'd seen how deeply Maggie had connected with those two tiny lives. And they realized maybe that chapter wasn't finished yet. Now the shelter had a big decision to make. Could Hannah and Carrie be reunited with Maggie? Would it be too much for her new family? Or would it be the most natural thing in the world to bring them together again, for good? Sandy sat quietly with the application in her hand, heart full. "They already love her," she said, "and she already loves them." The staff agreed to seriously consider the possibility. It wouldn't be easy, But the idea of that little trio, the grieving mother and two once-scared pups, finally being together again in one home? It was hard not to picture it. The shelter team couldn't help but wonder, would the puppies remember her? It had been a full month since Maggie had crawled out of her kennel to comfort them. They were so young at the time, just weeks old. Maybe too young to hold on to memories like that. Still, there was a quiet hope that something in them would remember the dog who stayed beside them that night. After a long talk with Maggie's adoptive family, the decision was made. The puppies would go home with her. The day of the reunion came quickly, and there was a different kind of energy in the shelter. Everyone knew this wasn't just any adoption. This was a second chance to bring something special full circle. Maggie's new family arrived first, smiling and a little nervous. They had no idea how Maggie would react or how the puppies would respond, but they trusted the bond they'd heard so much about. Maggie stayed close to their side, tail wagging gently. She didn't know there was a surprise waiting for her in the next room. Hannah and Carrie were brought in separately, their tails swishing, ears perked up. At first it was just excitement about being somewhere new. But then Maggie caught a scent. She paused mid-step, her body stiffened for a second, and then her head tilted slightly. Her eyes searched the room and locked onto the two puppies standing a few feet away. Hannah was the first to notice her. Then Carrie. Their ears perked, and for a moment no one moved. And then Maggie stepped forward. She approached slowly but surely, tail wagging faster now. She lowered her head and sniffed the pups gently. One soft nudge, then another. No barking, no jumping, just quiet recognition. The puppies inched closer, sniffed back, and before long the three of them were standing nose to nose, as if no time had passed at all. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't need to be. It was peaceful, familiar, right. The staff watched from the sidelines, grinning with misty eyes. No one said anything. They just let the moment happen. Over the next few days, Maggie, Hannah, and Carrie settled into life together in their new home. What started as an unexpected connection in the middle of a lonely night had now become something permanent. The pups, once so scared and unsure, followed Maggie around the house like they'd always been there. And Maggie, the dog who had comforted them when no one else could, seemed finally at peace herself. They didn't need words, or even memory, to explain it. They just belonged together. And so what began as a story about a dog squeezing through a tiny opening became something bigger. A reminder that bonds aren't always built through time, but through kindness, instinct, and care. Would you have done the same and adopted the puppies too? And what would you have thought if you saw a full-grown dog slipping out of her kennel just to check on someone in need? Let us know in the comments. And if you love this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more feel-good moments just like this. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.